Hello. Good evening. Just getting the laptop started. 1 second, and then we'll get started. Hello. Good evening. Yeah, I forgot. I always forget to mute the audio. Every time. I never fail. Just got to refresh YouTube on my laptop, and then we're good to go. There we go. Bobby Booth is the first one in the door. Good evening to you, my friend. Change the chat options to live chat. Just Bobby's also here. He says, good evening. He found a video is good. Well, that's good. That makes a change. It won't stay that way. It will break up. It will pixelate. It will freeze. It will garble. It will do all that kind of stuff. Because that's my internet at the moment, but not for very much longer. That's what I have to keep telling myself. It's not going to be very much longer before my internet is probably about 150 times faster, which I'm very, very much looking forward to. It's going to be one of the plus points of moving house. So looking forward to that. And we are packing down our lives gradually. The walls are now replete of photographs. All of those are away. No ornaments. They're all gone. And we just got my library of about 6,000 books to deal with now. That is a task all of its own that I don't envy anyone having to sort out. So tonight, folks, we are here for Songwriting Simplified because Jonny very much needs a bit of a breather and a bit of a break to attend to some family issues. He's kind of posted about that. He's made public. He was supposed to be in LA today and over the course of this weekend, but he's had to pull out of that due to ill health of his stepmom. So I think he is hanging out with his dad and caring for him tonight. And we'll see. I guess we'll see where we are tomorrow. So I'm going to be doing my regular, normal Sunday night lives on Sunday anyway. So this week has been a bit of a funny one because I think I've done 2 live streams this week. One for Home Studio Trainer, and this one for Songwriting Simplified. So 2 bonus streams from me. Aren't you lucky? So we have, at the moment, we've only got 2 people in the chat, and it says that 9 are watching now. So if you are here and you're watching this, say hello in the chat. It'd be cool. We are going to talk about songwriting tonight. That is what we are talking about. That is our subject. Bob Powell is here, and he has responded literally to what I just said. And he says, how's it going? Everything was going cool. Well, reasonably. I'm back on some very hefty painkillers. I took a bit of a tumble when I was out this afternoon and have managed to probably, quite likely, tear some ligaments in my right foot. So, not nice. I completely turned my foot almost right over. So, not so good. So I am hobbling about and I'm trying to, carry on and get things done because, like I said, we're moving in about 6 weeks or so here. Bill Everts is here. Good to see you, Bill, from Houston. That would be Houston, Texas, right? Because we have a Houston here in Scotland. So I'm suspecting that you are not from Houston, Scotland. You are Houston, Texas, I think. Just Bob says, ouch. Yes, it most certainly was. Oh my gosh. The last time I experienced pain like that was when I completely snapped both sets of hamstrings when I was a teenager. I was playing cricket and I was about 17. I was in a county match and I knew I was being watched by some high-profile coaches and that kind of thing. And so I was on a mission to bowl extra accurate and extra fast. And unfortunately, on that particular occasion, the pitch was ever so slightly damp. Nowadays, with covered pitches, that wouldn't happen. And what happened was the spikes on my shoes went straight into the very soft, moist turf of the pitch where I was where you bowl from, and they decided to stay, and they decided to go right in and stay, and I kept on going. So my legs decided they wanted to stay. The rest of me didn't. The rest of me was going to bowl. And naturally, hamstrings don't take that kind of pressure, so they snapped. And according to witnesses, it sounded like 2 gunshots going off. And you could hear it echo around the ground. And oh boy, the pain was so great. I think I actually passed out. But on this occasion today, I would say it was, if that was 10 in terms of pain threshold, then this afternoon was probably about 8. That was pretty bad. Scared the life out of my kids. They thought something serious had happened. My daughter, who is 8, nearly 9, and she is awesome, she said, "Dad, give me your phone and I'll call an ambulance." And I was just like, wow, presence of mind of my kids. But I didn't need an ambulance. We were okay. I managed to get myself back home and everything was fine. Hang on, what's this? Okay, don't need that. So yeah, so that's my story today. Nasty. Yeah, today, William says, today you probably only wish you had passed out and something serious did happen. Today I certainly wish I had passed out because it was pretty, I want to swear, but I can't. Painful. Insert your expletive of choice. Just Bob says, I ripped the cartilage in my socket of my shoulder completely free of the arm bone. Still not attached. 30% chance it would reattach after a year in a sling. Ooh, ouch. Yeah, wood beast. I've pulled some ligaments in my right foot. I took a bit of a tumble this afternoon when I was out with my kids and turned my foot right over. So yeah, not so good. I mean, I ought to have been much more careful than I was this afternoon because I don't have very much in the way of cartilage in my knees as it is. So I really shouldn't have been kind of mucking about. William, does that do it justice? Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I don't really have any cartilage in my knees left anyway. Because I have a kind of degenerative condition that kind of wastes away the cartilage in my knees. So eventually those are going to have to get replaced. Hopefully not until I'm about 60. But so I'm on pain meds for those anyway. But it was just a case of I now have to take double to deal with the extra additional pain. So I'm having a fun day. In fact, William, I think this does it justice. That pretty much sums it up. Oh dear. So that's my day. Weather-wise, it's been absolutely gorgeous here, but it's very humid, so I think we're probably going to get a thunderstorm at some point. All right, so how are folks doing? We've got quite a few people. We've got 11 people in the room, and Woodby says, same here, my knees are shot, not complaining. Yeah, a combination of my knees and that hamstring injury way back when I was 17 and being looked at for potentially joining one of the national youth programs for cricket training and stuff and playing for the national side. It didn't happen. Martin Weeks is here. Good evening, he says. Good evening to you, Martin. So yeah, so my hamstring injury basically took me out for 18 months. And you know, selectors have moved on to somebody else who was a good fast bowler at the time. And so that was that. That was the end of any. But that's fine. You know, I already had a growing and developing career in music. I was, you know, 17, 18 years old and playing professionally already. So Martin is Martin. Mike Neighbor is here, and he says shared across the board. Thank you, mate. Appreciate it. Bobby Booth says been in the 90s here this past week. Very hot. Martin says, assuming you're covering for JG, yes, that's why we're here. Safe assumption to make, Martin. So yeah, we're giving Johnny the night off so that he can go and be with his family, because his family pretty much need him right now, and I'm sure it's the best place for him to be. So yeah, so all our thoughts and prayers are with Johnny and his family right now. And also, I should say, brief interlude that our thoughts and prayers should be also with the families of the students and staff at the high school in Santa Fe in Texas, where there was yet another, to add to the collection, not that you really want to collect these kind of things, but yet another mass shooting event in a school, which has led to at least 10, as we know of it so far, 10 deaths and a dozen or so wounded. I'm going to reserve comment because you are all my friends, regardless of your political persuasions or where you stand on issues of guns. But really, Songwriting Simplified is not a platform for my politics or anyone else's politics. But yeah, I just thought that it was important to make note of this particular event that's taken place today, and that our thoughts and prayers should be with the families of those who are wounded, and also with the families of those who have been murdered. So yeah, that's all I'm going to say on it. I'm not going to get into the politics of it. So please, could you be respectful and refrain from political comment in the chat, please? I would appreciate that. If I see political comments in the chat, they will be deleted, because that's not what this is about. Martin says, what's the latest news on your relocation? Yeah, we are relocating. We will be out of here on July 2nd and moving to a new home about 5 minutes away from here. So it's going to be cool. Much more space, much more rent to pay, unfortunately, which means extra pressure on my business to perform superbly and make money. So, I mean, I am making money. I just need to make more. And Beatrice is here. She says, hello. That's a very musical hello. That's how I'm interpreting it anyway. So, yeah. Hello to you too, and welcome. We've got 21 people here. This is awesome. This is fantastic. All right, so let's get started. We are 9 minutes into the show. William says, space good, rent bad. Yeah, that's the way I see it too. It'd be nice. And Chris is here. Chris, excuse me, I have wind and I'm burping galore here, and I'm trying not to. Chris Beebe is here. Chris is a very, very good friend of mine, and a good supporter of Jonny Lipsham Studios and everything I do here. So I very much appreciate him, and I appreciate all of you. All of you are very cool, and it's very, very good to have an outstanding community such as this. We are relocating, and ordinarily that would be pressure enough, okay? And the financial burden of having to move is pretty big. And I have to say, my good friend, Mike Neighbor, of his own volition, of his own doing, without any prompting from anybody, decided to set up a GoFundMe page several months ago, and quietly worked very, very hard at raising some funds, which I hadn't asked him to do, but he just went ahead and did it. And at the end of it, he presented me with actually, for us as a family, a very large sum of money. So, which is going to mean that not only are we going to be able to relocate, we are not going to need to worry about the financial burden of having to move. So all of that burden is gone, and that is down to the Home Studio Trainer and Presonus communities combined, because donations came from outside of this. Excuse me a second. I got my foot tangled up in a cable. Donations came from outside of the home studio training community and from the wider Presonus community, which is fantastic. So thank you to Presonus and to the home studio trainer community for your help and support. So that's fantastic, guys. You guys are outstanding. So let's see. Where are we? We all need to make more money, says Mike. Yep. Woodby says donation coming soon. Woodbeast, you are awesome. But you already know that. Let's see. Bill Everett says, now you have a good excuse to not lift the boxes and piano, Johnny. Yeah, you're not kidding. I've got 6 weeks, so I'm sure my foot is going to be fine in 6 weeks. So, you know, as it is, because of my knees, I probably can't lift very much anyway, because my knees just, you know, they won't handle the strain and the stress. So, for the most part, I'll be directing traffic, and I'll be making sure that everything of great value gets stored and packed correctly. So, there we go. You guys are talking about the soft tube saturation knob, right? Chris, Bill? I have it. You can get it from your Presonus account. Because Presonus had a little thing going with soft tube. In fact, I still think they do have a little thing going on with soft tube, because not only could you get the saturation knob for free, but you can also get the soft tube tape, which is not free. It's a little bit, it costs a reasonable amount, but it is extremely cool, and you can get it from the Presonus shop. So obviously there is some kind of partnership happening between Presonus and Softtube, so that is very cool. And I am looking forward to further developments from them. So let's see. Yes, it is fantastic, by the way, that Softtube saturation knob. I mean, there are some tracks where you can just like, you can crank it and it sounds epic. And there are some tracks where you can just have it on just a hair and it gives you enough warmth and enough kind of different kind of coolness and different kind of vibe, you know, to just make a very subtle difference to your sound source, whatever that might be. So yes, you're going to get it. Good. Excellent. Martin says, these Presonus groups not only have the best hardware and software, but the coolest musicians and creators out there. I've distinctly noticed the quality of music production is better than others. That's interesting observations, Martin. Certainly. I mean, I think every DAW has its own little community of sorts. Certainly the Steinberg community is absolutely enormous. It's massive. You get people from pretty much every country in the entire world represented there. You know, and they have, you know, they might be Nuendo guys, they might be Cubase guys. I well remember my days, kind of like from the early days of the Cubase forums, actually hanging out there in the Steinberg forums. But really, I have to agree, having hung out in the Steinberg forums, and in the Clavier Nord forums and the Yamaha forums, because I have a fair amount of Yamaha gear as well. So, you know, I'm always interacting with folk there, because I have a Flugelhorn and I have this guy, the QS300. And yeah, they all have their own little community groups. But yes, I would agree that the Presonus one is what makes the Presonus groups unique, my opinion, is the fact that it is also populated by Presonus employees. You know, not just average, ordinary Presonus employees. You know, the kind of people that you know, they are administrators or something like that. But you also get senior folks like Rick Nakvi, and some of the QA guys like Dominic Bazil and Lawrence Farr, and people like that who are you know, personal friends of mine and have become so. And you know, they happily, and Ray Tanson from who is the product manager of the Series 3 consoles, those are his babies, and They're a work of genius, my opinion. And you know, those guys quite happily hang out in the forums, in the Personas Facebook groups, and as well as on the forum, the Personas forum as well. So, you know, that to me is quite unique. You certainly would not see that in Steinberg, for sure. Trying to get senior folks into the Steinberg community was pretty much, it just didn't happen. So, yeah, and Just Bob says, no pretentious people. Yeah, absolutely. Even the senior high-ranking folks at Personas are not at all pretentious. They're very down-to-earth, ordinary musicians like the rest of us. So it's very cool. Mike Neighbor says, and he's talking to Martin, but he says, there are some groups I left because there's no class shown by its members. They shall remain nameless. Yeah, there are a good number of groups like that. I have to say, Gear Sluts, if you've ever been over there, stupid name for a group, for a forum, by the way, but there's a place where people really don't have any class. There's an awful lot of arrogance and pretentiousness and snobbery. And people who are blatantly keyboard warriors, and that's about all they are. You know, they wouldn't say half the things to your face, and they certainly wouldn't want you to turn up to their studios, because if you turned up to their studios, you'd actually see what they have and what they can actually do, which I suspect in a lot of cases is meh. All right, anyway, we are 18 minutes into this, and we're not really talking about songwriting, so let's get to it. Let's get your questions, guys, on all aspects of songwriting, from melody, harmony, lyric writing, narratives, whatever you need help with, arrangement, all of the above, anything to do with songwriting. So we're not really going to talk about recording or mixing. We maybe save those kind of questions for the end, but I would really like to just focus our attention tonight on our songwriting and where we're at, what we think our strengths are, what areas we think we need to develop, and then let's see if we can help answer some of those questions. Bill Everett says, I've been astounded by how freely Studio One professionals share their wealth of experience. Quite refreshing. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's what makes the community work so well. It's the fact that you have folks who are working in Studio One for a living, and then you have folks who are, you know, hobbyists, or they're just brand new, starting out for the first time, and have maybe got their first computer and they want to make music on their computer. So they've got Studio One and maybe an audio box USB and a little mic or something, and maybe one of those small little 25 key controller keyboards, you know, Studio One artist, that kind of stuff. You know, it's a level playing field, folks. It's a level playing field. Didn't used to be. 25 years ago, you know, there was quite a gap between people who were brand new and just starting out and people who had a lot of experience, had 25, 30 years experience. And, you know, those that were new were intimidated by those that were up there, and those who were up there looked down at them, at those newbies, and went, you know, a lot of snootiness. And I'm not going to tell you my secrets. I'm not going to tell you how I learned that. You're going to have to figure that out for yourself, because that's how I did it. You know, not very helpful. However, nowadays, because of the internet and because of the plethora of resources that are available to us now, it's level. Professionals, hobbyists, we're all on the same ship. All right, so let's see. Somebody asked a question. It was Just Bob who says, how do you find the key of a song? It isn't necessarily the first chord of the song, is it? That is correct. It doesn't have to be the first chord of the song. For example, let's take a Steely Dan classic, Peg. It is in the key of G. It's essentially a 12-bar blues in G, okay? But here's the thing. It doesn't start on G. It starts on C. It starts on a C major 7. Because it features, what makes this song really work is because it features this, I guess you'd call it, from a music theory point of view, you'd call it a plagal cadence, because it goes from it goes from a C chord. It's like your A main cadence, you know. Okay, So it goes from there to there. It doesn't start on the G chord like a regular blues would, you know. You know, that's how a regular 12-bar blues would go, right? So it's very clearly got a G kind of thing going on. But instead, Peg starts on a C, going to a G. But then when you get to the what would be the 4 chord, the C chord in the QG, so we're kind of like vamping this thing. The implication being that we're on G and we're just breaking it up a little bit. And then what happens next is we keep this kind of 4-to-1 thing going, but this time based on C. And then back. And that's how the verse goes. So they basically took something as simple as a 12-bar blues and gave it a slightly sophisticated twist. Now, what makes it, I mean, it sounds gloriously simple. And it is essentially gloriously simple. It's just, you know, C to G, C to G, then F to C, F to C, and then sorry, G to D, F to C. I mean, that's essentially all it is if you just strip it back. So it's actually very, very simple. It's a combination of the rhythm and the voicings that makes it unique. Because as much as it implies a G chord, it also implies the Mixolydian scale, rather than your traditional blues scale. Here's your traditional blues scale. So there's your traditional blues scale, but that's not really implied in Peg. What's really implied is Mixolydian scales. So Mixolydian is your C major scale, but starting on G instead of C. So if this is your C major scale, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, shift that down so that your starting point is G. And that's the implication, because you're playing just white notes. Okay, and that pretty much goes all the way through the whole song. So when you're on every chord change, when you're on the C here, sorry, let's play it right. So when you're on the F to C bit, that's implying the C Mixolydian, or the C dominant jazz, or C bebop scale, essentially. C, D, E, F, G, A, B flat, C. Okay? And then when you're on D, okay? So how do we find the first chord of our song and therefore the key center? It's a big wide open question. Essentially what I'm trying to say is it doesn't have to start with chord 1. So if you decide, hey, I'm going to write in A flat, I'm going to write a kind of blues ballad in A flat, with lots of major 7th chords, because blues ballads, certainly 1950s blues ballads, would feature lots of major 7ths. So you'd feature lots of major 7ths there, right? But you know, we've started on the route on chord 1 there, haven't we? We've said, hey, this is going to be an A flat. Okay. So, you know, you can start on chord 1. You don't have to. You can start on a different chord. You know, there are songs where the intro is in one key, and then it starts in maybe the relative minor for the verse. An example of that would be again another Steely Dan song, because I know a lot of Steely Dan songs because over the, you know, the 35 years or so that I've been playing, excuse me, I played a lot of Steely Dan songs, and one of the ones we used to play, I've not played it in years, is Third World Man from the Gaucho record. Now, what's interesting about that is that song kind of flits between major and minor. So the verse is major, but the chorus is minor. So it's changing mode, is what you'd call it, from major to minor, pretty much all the time. So that's another little kind of harmonic writing device that you can use. All right, let's see what other questions we've got that I've not been looking at. I'm going to scroll up. Katie Lied is another great example, yeah, of a superbly well-written Steely Dan song. Yep, I agree. I was watching a lot of channels before I joined any live streams. I'm not really sure what you're talking about there, I'm afraid, Beatrice. Bill Everett says, I usually look for 2 major chords that are a whole step apart. They're usually the 4 and the 5. Okay. Anyone see leaves it feeling unresolved, says Robert Overbeek. Robert, I didn't see you come in. Sorry, mate. Good to see you. I'm just trying to scroll up and try and catch the start of this conversation. William says, my weaknesses in lyric writing, I almost start with a melody or chord progression and then shoehorn lyrics into the song. You know what? There's a lot of people that write like that. I do as well. I will regularly start with a set of chord changes and an arrangement in my head. So I've got the whole band, you know, kind of sat down at their instruments and in my head, I like to call it my cerebral jazz club, and they will be working away on the tune. And then I kind of work out, you know, pretty much I will sketch that all out into Studio One, and then I'll mix that down to an MP3. It will live on my phone for about 3 or 4 days, and I'll listen to it maybe 5, 6, 7 times a day. And during that time, the song will have told me, the arrangement that I've got, the song will have told me what the song is about, who the characters are, what the scenario is, what the personalities of these characters are like, and I will start to build a narrative, and out of that narrative, I'll start to kind of like strip it down to its bare bone essentials. And that's how I get my song. So it starts out with a narrative, and then from that narrative, from that story, I distill it down to the bare basics, as if it's kind of like, you know, fractured storytelling style, which is like, you know, where you have like little, maybe, you know, if let's say you witness, you know, some major event. Let's say you're on a bus and you're sat there quietly minding your own business as you wait for your bus to arrive at its destination or the bus stop where you want to get off at. And let's say as you're going down the road, there's a parked car nearby, and suddenly that parked car just goes bang and explodes. Pretty traumatic event. Bus stops, obviously. All the passengers get off, and you know, police and fire department and everybody else and ambulance are all there fairly quickly. Suddenly you've got quite a story to tell. So, you know, you get on the phone, let's say you're on the way to work. So you get on the phone to your work and you say, look, I'm going to be late because this car exploded. And then you start explaining what you witnessed. Now, because it's very, very fresh, because it's very, very fresh in your mind, your mind has not yet completely fully processed everything that you have just seen. And so there are bits of it that become more important than others as your brain is trying to sort them all out. And they might genuinely not be more important than others, but your brain is still trying to sort out the whole story. So there are things that are more vivid than others. Like you might go, and this is the registration number of the car, or this car was this particular color. Something will stand out that maybe isn't really meant to in its proper place. And that's how you do fractured storytelling. And that's how I get my songs. So I hope that helps. I'm going to scroll down a bit more now. Got an off-topic question, if you don't mind. I'm writing a doom-style song. The verse begins on B to C sharp to D to C sharp and resolves on C. So sound I want. Any ideas on the scale that might work? Oh, so these are chords, are they right, Robert? So you got a B to a C sharp to a D to a C sharp and then resolves on the C. So sound I want. Any ideas on a scale? So you're going. So this could be a substitute for a dominant chord, taking you back to B, couldn't it? So a scale that you might want is, you see, this is one of those times where, because it's all parallel movements, and they kind of don't necessarily belong together in terms of a standard progression. This is where you could borrow from non-Western scales. So you wouldn't necessarily be talking about major and minor. You'd maybe be talking about Lydian and Locrian, and maybe even some Oriental scales. That could be your melody line. Something like that. I mean, I don't know the context, obviously, but there you go. Ending on C leaves it feeling unresolved, which is exactly what you want. Exactly. And unresolution can be just as powerful as resolution. It's a very effective tool. But again, just like resolution from something dissonant, if you're going to do the opposite and kind of keep the dissonance without resolving it, I would say be careful how you do that and don't overuse it. Because if you overuse it, it's a technique and a tool that loses its power and its command and its authority. And you want something like that, where you've got an unexpected chord or an unexpected set of chord changes or an unexpected melody note. You want that to have impact. You want that to have power. You want that to have authority over the listener's ears. So you don't want to overdo it. Otherwise, you'll turn the listener off, and they, at first they'll be like, "Oh wow, that's really grabbing me. That's really interesting. It sounds unique. It sounds different." But when you've done it for the 5th or 6th time, they'll be like, "Okay, all right." You know what I mean? And you don't want your listener to be passive at any point in your song. Let me scroll down a little bit more. Okay, I think I've reached the end. Okay, Woodbeast and Didi are talking of songwriting, which is cool. John Anderson is here. Hey, good to see you, mate. Laptop started to misbehave. Yeah, my little laptop does that as well from time to time. Let's see. Chris says there are quite a few videos that discuss the circle of fifths. Rick Beato has a good one, but he moves pretty fast. Rick Beato is a genius. He is a musicologist. He is a musician. He is a producer. He is an arranger. He's a composer. He is a mix engineer. He is an all-round, extremely gifted man. And he's one of the only people I know that has completely taken apart an Alan Holdsworth song and done a proper full-scale analysis of the song, including the chord changes and scale tones and that kind of stuff, and how to improvise on Alan Holdsworth chord changes, which can be pretty daunting because Alan Holdsworth's approach to harmony was very unique. He kind of took a modal approach, and by modal I mean kind of like a scalar approach to harmony rather than a kind of building stacks, approach to harmony. So it was much more linear approach, I guess you could call it. So he would take a scale and then he would build harmony out of that. So for example, the Mixolydian scale. Okay, you can play G7 on that and move that around. Which is actually a favored little harmonic device of classical composer Holst, who wrote Holst the Planets. You know, he would like pedal a G. And just move that G7 chord up and down the notes. But Alan Holdsworth would do weird things. He would take dissonances and wide leaps and then, wide voicings like, and then he'd bring it really close to, so in the same, almost in the same beat, you'd have, something like this. You'd have voicings like that going on. And because you're a piano player, you've got like 10 fingers, so you could literally do something like this. And those are the kind of things that Alan Holdsworth would do with his 4 fingers on his guitar, on the neck of the guitar. Crazy, I know. Woodby says, you are like a George Martin with your grasp of music. Well, there's a compliment and a half. George Martin was a pioneering producer, invented recording techniques and mixing techniques that have stood the test of time and have been largely employed by mix engineers the world over as kind of pretty much standard techniques. That his techniques are taught in schools and colleges and universities all around the world as a result of the things that he pioneered, like tape loops, for example. And now, heck, we have loops in Studio One. You just drag it in, and there it is. It's a loop. Isn't that crazy? George Martin, to create a loop, would make the recording and then pass the tape down the corridor into the next studio, round a couple of chairs, round a hat stand, and then back down the corridor, back into the other spool of the tape, all keeping that tape at an even tension all the way around. And that's how he created loops. And then, of course, you print that to another tape machine, and there you've got your loop sorted. Nowadays, we just go, oh, that's a nice little drum loop. In, hit play, and you've got a loop in like a nanosecond. So Martin says, I thought looping was a Les Paul invention. Well, he certainly had initial ideas, kind of like everyone says, hey, the telephone. Alexander Bell invented that, didn't he? Actually, not entirely on his own, he didn't. And then they say, hey, hang on a minute. Another pioneering Scottish engineer by the name of John Logie Baird invented television, didn't he? Not entirely on his own, he didn't. He wasn't the first to be involved in the concepts that became television. But what he did do was he formalized and codified it and made it something much bigger than just, kind of like prototype concepts. Les Paul invented prototype concepts that took on and had a future of their own, that other people like George Martin came along and went, hey, Les, that is a really great idea, but you know what, you're thinking too small, you could do it much bigger, much better. So let's see. William says, two other things I love in songwriting are tempo and/or meter changes. The Beatles were masters of that. Yes, certainly were. But they were not, again, they were not the only ones. They were possibly the first popular music band to bring the whole idea of tempo and meter changes to popular song, but it had been done before. Like way before. Let's just pick one out of the hat. Something like Dave Brubeck, a piano player like Dave Brubeck, who took dance music from a long time ago, like the square dance, for example, popular folk dances, and then it's a square dance. It has a particular form to it, and he just tweaked the form and the style, and it became an unsquare dance because it had an unusual meter. And he did a waltz as well called I forget what it's called now, but it's a waltz, but it isn't. And so he pioneered rhythmic concepts like polyrhythmia, like metric modulation. All the stuff that Neil Peart from Rush would say, hey, I do all this all the time. Well, you know what? Dave Brubeck was the first. The first person to invent metric modulation was Dave Brubeck. So there you go. And actually, even before him, Scriabin and Bartok and Berlioz before him were doing it. So there you go. In so many ways, folks, nobody is first to do anything. And conversely, in so many ways, there are lots of people that pioneer. Charlie Parker was a pioneer. But you know what? Lester Young was kind of like starting to do the same kind of things with harmony and rhythmic developments. And that obviously came to the attention of the very young Charlie Parker when he would have been about 19 or 20 when he was exposed to Lester Young, maybe even younger. And what Lester was doing eventually through people like Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie, Thelonious Monk, and a few others, it became bebop. And then bebop through Miles Davis became cool jazz. And through Coltrane alongside Miles Davis became modal jazz and all of that. And then you chuck Latin, Stan Getz comes along. Stan had been around from the bebop period all the way through, and then he went to Brazil for 3 months and spent a lot of time with Brazilian musicians and learned all of their music. And then he brought that back with him when he went back home, and suddenly he had Latin jazz, and he had a whole bunch of popular hits, like Blue Bossa, for example. And that, he became like Miles Davis, became, a very wealthy jazz musician. Chris says, Jacko played bass, taking cues from the harmony. Yep. Pretty much every bass player does, though. I mean, you only have to go back. You have to go back to Jimmy Blanton, I think, in the late 1920s, early 30s. And he started, getting this whole idea of a walking bass pattern beginning. And I think that was Duke Ellington's bass player, who had this idea of, instead of just playing on the 1 and the 3, which was the convention at the time, which had, of course, come from marching band techniques, which is, marching band has a lot of its roots. Jazz music has a lot of its roots in marching band music originally. And so, that's where that kind of boom, 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 that kind of bass playing came from. And then Jimmy Blanton came along and said, hang on a minute, there's beats 2 and 4 that you could fill out as well. And then the walking bass line was invented. And then, of course, you have great bass players like Jimmy Garrison, who was John Coltrane's bass player of choice in the late 50s, early 60s. Charlie Mingus was probably the first great bass genius. And then, of course, out of that, you have Jaco Pastorius. Jaco Pastorius was very, very, very influenced by Charlie Mingus. Diego, hey Diego, how you doing, mate? He says, I'm writing a song, but I only have 4 chords: F sharp minor, B in the bass, E9 and A6 in a bossa style and a melody, but I don't know where else I can go. Well, let's have a look at those chord changes. So we have F sharp minor. Sorry, F sharp minor with F sharp in the bass. And then, that's nice. I like that. And then you got E9 to A6. Well, you could go around that again by going. So when you're on the A, you could go around that again. When you've got to your A, to get back to that F sharp minor, you could go via E with G sharp in the bass. So. You could change key altogether, you know, because you've got 3, 6, 2, 5. Takes you to key of D. So, I mean, I accidentally went to D flat major there. Managed to work my way back, but so you know, you particularly in bossa, you can use a lot of bebop harmonies. So you can use 2-5-1s extensively. You know, which is essentially what you've got here. You've got like this in the key of D, you've got like a 3, a 6, a 2, a 5, 1 thing going on. So you could like. Try trading that A6 for an E flat 7. So you've William Everett suggests try going D sharp diminished, E7A. Okay, so D sharp diminished to E7. So out of those chord changes, where are we going to go next? We're going to go. Yeah, kind of. It's. I can see where you're going with that, William, but it's kind of a little bit weakened because we've already got the A's in there. We've essentially got a 3, 6, 2, 5, 1 in D is essentially what we've got here in these chord changes. So you could make most of that. Or in fact, here's one thing you could do, Diego, is you could actually then, so you could play that a couple of times and then you could take it up a half step. So you could go. And then go back, right? And then go back to that F sharp minor via the E over G sharp. So there's a whole bunch of things you could do with 2-5-1s and then substituting those. Okay, substituting those by a tritone, or you could substitute via a major or minor third, which is a John Coltrane harmonic technique, which you can apply to bossa nova. It does work, but again, like anything else, don't overdo tritonal substitution. Don't overdo thirds related substitution either. Let's see, Peter. Okay, yeah. Okay, that's fine. You're in Jonny Lipsham's house. Yes. Thank you, Just Bob. Let's see. Diego says, I tried empowering F sharp and go to B. I'm not quite sure what you mean by empowering. But yeah, for Mike is just kind of beginning to explore harmony and piano. So some of this talk of 251s and stuff will be marginally over his head. But you know what, Mike, that's okay, because you're not actually too far behind these kind of concepts. I think the last time I spoke to you on Skype, we were kind of talking 251s and how you can use them to create songs, and you can use 251s all the time, and end up in any key. So you could start, with a 251 in F, and then a 251 in E flat, and then turn that into a 251 in A flat. So you could end up in the key of B fairly easily. So, start with your C major. And now you're in the key of B. Just like that, just by doing a series of little 251s along the way. And it works. I make it sound easy because I've been doing it for 30 years, but start simple. C major. The next chord up is going to be D minor. So is 2 minor? Yes, 2 is minor, that's right. And 5 is always a dominant chord. Chris is quite correct. So there's 1, there's 2, there's 5, there's 1. So 2, 5, 1, D minor, G7, C. And then all I'm doing basically is a series of 251s. But when I get to the 1, I turn that into a 2. So I immediately go minor. So if I want to build a chain of these, so you would go, let's see, let's build a chain of these. So let's go 251 in F, and then when I get to the 1, instead of going F major, I'll go F minor, then to B flat 7 to E flat. Okay, so we'll go G minor, C7, then instead of F, I'll go F minor, B flat 7, E flat minor, A flat 7, D flat minor, F sharp, G flat 7 to C flat, and then we're in C flat major there, because we've gone through the left-hand side of the cycle of fifths, so we're on the flat side. And then, of course, you tilt over the axis and you're into sharp keys. Okay, so you can build sequences of 251s. In fact, John Coltrane's Giant Steps, go listen to that. It's basically the whole song is made out of 251s. It has 3 key centers, so it's E flat, G major, and B major. Okay, and all it is a series of 251s between those 3 key centers. And the genius of it is that it is very simple, but those 251s go by pretty quick because the tempo is about 300 beats a minute. And it's 2 chords per bar. So dee da dee da dee 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 dee. So it's really, really fast. And you got to play all those chord changes. So you have to pick out like 4 or 5 notes from each chord change to make it work. Otherwise, you're stuck. You're never going to play it. So so this is why 2-5-1s are really important, because they are so important to jazz music. They're important to blues, funnily enough. Even if you're only using chord 1, chord 4, and chord 5, you can use a 2-5 to get you between those chords. So, for example, if we're doing a blues in C, okay, blues in C, and so we're going to do, between each of the chord changes, we're going to do a 2-5-1 to get there. All right, so we're on C here. Now, our next chord is going to be F, because that's chord 4. All right, so we want to go. Here we go. So all I'm doing there sounds really complicated, but it's basically just in between each chord of the blues, the 1, the 4, the 5, the C, the F, the G. To get to the next chord, I'm doing a 2-5-1 to get to it. So we went C, and then we went G minor, C7, F, and then we need to get back, so D minor, G7, C. Okay, and then the next chord, chord is going to be G, so we go A minor, D7, G, then we do G flat 7 to substitute, and then we get to F7, then D flat 7 to substitute, which gets me back to C. And then I'll do a little 3-6-5-2-1 2-5-1 turnaround. 1 1 6 1 6 2 5 1, and then I'm back to the start of my 12-bar blues. So there you go. That's a little challenge for you if you want to really develop your harmonic palette. What about playing the 1 major before turning it into 2 minor? Example, D minor, G7, C, C minor, F7, B flat, major 7. Yeah, so, you know. Yep, you can go all the way around like I just did. That was right the way around the cycle of fifths in 2-5-1s. So that would work. And that was Ragnar Bjornsson. I hope I said your name right, Ragnar. Ragnar? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you are new to my stream. So well done and welcome. We got 16 people here now. I think we had about 25 at one point. And we have just hit 1 a.m. So pretty much we're just about. Let's see. Bill Everett says, I've always said that I want to die peacefully in my sleep like my grandfather, not screaming in terror like his passengers. Okay. Not sure what that's all about. Okay. Martin Weeks says, what was the chord changes for my turnaround? Okay, I'm tending to use when I get to the end of a blues, so I'll go, you know, G to F, and then I'll go 1 6 2 5 1 in C. Okay, so I'm going C, A7, D minor, G7, 1. Now I can substitute all of those. So I can go 1 I can go 1 flat 3, flat 6, flat 2 to 1. So there's different ways to skin that cat. All that happens is when you substitute like I just did, so instead of going to A, so I went from C, instead of going C to A to D minor to G7 to C, which is the more logical harmonic approach, I went C, tritonal substitution, there's my flat 5 tritonal interval, so that takes me E flat. And then this one wasn't tritonal, I used A flat, because I wanted to get to D flat to get me back to 1, because that's D flat was substituting as G7 to get me back to chord 1. Okay. And all that does is give you a whole bunch of other harmonic possibilities that will give you chord tones for improvising on, which is where, I mean, that's pretty much the heart and soul of bebop, ultimately, is all about. That's why tritonal substitution is so important to bebop. And the reason why it is because it gives you a whole bunch of extra notes to improvise on rather than just the blues scale. Yes, you can just use the blues scale, but hey, why use the blues scale? Why use the blues scale when you can use the chord tones, notes from the chords, and add some extensions like flat 9, sharp 9s, sharp 11, flat 13s, those kind of things. Martin says, so Nashville number wise is 1625. Yes, 16251. Yes. Because 1 is the tonic. Yeah, I mean, that'd be the same in Roman as well. 16251. Okay, or 1 flat 3. 1 flat 3, 2 flat 2, 1. That's another way to do it. Or 1 flat 3, flat 6, flat 2 to 1. Can you take those chords and make loops or other apps? Yes, I could do, I guess. How does one make a 251 sound original and unheard of? Hey, you see, that's all to do with your voicings and substitution, chord substitution. So, for example, instead of going a little bit boring, as you rightly point out. So, what if I did this? You can substitute any chord for any other chord, so why not? Providing you got the 2 essential notes in common, the 3rd and the 7th. If the 3rd of the chord and the 7th of your chord, your C chord, for example, so long as those are common to the substitute chord, it would work. So, for example, B flat and E, well, that's common to G flat 7, which is why tritone substitution works. Because look how it resolves. So that's 5-1 in F. Look how it resolves. If I just take those 2 notes, the B flat and the E from the C7, change the C to a G flat, you get G flat 7 to 1. Okay, works like a treat. That's why tritonal substitution absolutely works. But, it's not the only substitution method. Providing you got 2 tones, 2 chord tones at least in common with your substitute chord, it works. I should consider selling loops. Man, maybe I should. Maybe you're right. Slash chords with odd bass notes or extended chords, the best way to enhance them. That is definitely one way to enhance them, Ragnar. You can certainly do that. You can add sharp 11s in. You could do this. You could go. You can do all of that stuff. The question is, why? Why are you doing that? Why are you going for a C13 sharp 11 and not just a C7 or a C9 chord? You need to be able to justify why you're doing it. That's the key. Tried my Achilles heel. Triads. C, E, G. That's a triad. F, A, C is a triad. It's just 3 notes, Chris. Yes, it is my Skype, Diego. Yeah, I'm involved in a whole bunch of Skype conversations. And so that's why it's going boink, 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 or whatever the sound is. Yeah, now people are sending photos. But yeah, I'm involved in a whole bunch of Skype calls. I do tech support for people, and I work with my clients, and often they send me messages via Skype as well. So that's what's going on just now. All right, well, we are at 7 minutes past 1. Ragnar says, man, you're really good. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you very much for the kind words, Ragnar. That's very kind of you to say so. I put in a lot of work. I put in a lot of practice, and I had no friends when I was at school because I spent all my time listening over and over and over again to Miles Davis records, to John Coltrane records, to Charlie Parker, to Steely Dan, to Weather Report, to Earth, Wind and Fire, to Chicago, to Average White Band, to whatever I could get my hands on. Tower of Power, Frank Zappa, the Brecker Brothers, whatever I could get my hands on that sounded cool, I would sit and I would listen to it and I'd try and work it out. Because for me, music isn't just to listen to, which annoys the life out of my wife, because my wife sometimes will put a record on because she just wants to listen to it. So yes, I am going to be on Sunday, Robert. But for me, music is about getting involved in it, not just about listening. I mean, yes, I listen, but I can't listen passively. I can't just sit there with a book and listen to a record. I can't do that. My brain has to be actively engaged with the music. So that means quite often, even if I'm at a restaurant having dinner with my wife, and something comes on the radio, like maybe on the PA, like maybe, I don't know, like a Billy Joel record. Billy Joel is a wonderful piano player and a fantastic songwriter. And I'll be listening to the chord changes as they go past, and I'll be thinking about how I might improvise on that. In my head, I might even be improvising on it. I might even, in my head, have my little tenor saxophone out and be blowing over the chord changes of that song. And I might be thinking, I wonder if I reverse those chords. I wonder if I substitute that chord for this one and play the chord tones over that. That fits nicely. My head is doing that all the time, folks. So, I don't have any friends apart from you guys, because you guys are weird enough to come and sit and listen to me. Yeah, Whippy says there's medication for that. Yeah, you're not kidding. There is. I am what they call high functioning autistic, and I think it's pretty clear that I am. So I'm unable to form close social friends. I just can't do it. I can't be with people. I can't be in crowds, that kind of thing. But I can bury my head and my heart and my energy into music and chord changes and mixing and working out how a snare drum on a classic record was EQ'd. Those kind of things. Ragnar says you have to be your own best friend. Yeah, you're not kidding there, because you know what? I don't have very many actual real life people that are actually friends of mine. I have a few. I have a close little circle of folks that I trust. Anyways, it is 10 past 1. And I thank you very much, everybody, for coming to Songwriting Simplified live at Jonny Lipsham Studios. I am on Sunday at 6 p.m. for my regular Sunday night live. And I guess the next time you will see me after that will be probably on Tuesday. I will be around on Tuesday for the big announcement from Personas, whatever that's going to be. It's going to be awesome, whatever it's going to be. is going to be very exciting. And there's a chance, if you don't have one, by the way, folks, there is a chance for you to win a Fader Port 8. So if you don't have one and you want one, enter and you get to win it. So there you go. So I'll be around for that, and then I'll be around again on Wednesday for Songwriting Simplified with Jonny, providing all is well domestically for him. If not, then we'll be back here, but we'll keep you posted. Both Jonny and I will try and get the message out there, whichever way it's going to be. Okay, so next week, be prepared for next week to be a little bit more changeable and flexible, should we say, because, you know, there is this big announcement coming on Tuesday. So, you know, that's going to have a pretty big impact, and everybody is going to want to be talking about the result of that big announcement. So, Jonny and I may well do, more live streams than we normally would. And Dave Vignola and I may well be doing some as well. So keep your eyes on our YouTube channels collectively and see what pops up that will grab your interest with regards to what we find out on Tuesday. All right, guys, I'm going to split and get myself some sleep because the next few days are going to be absolutely chaos with one foot in the air. So, all right, folks, take care. Good night. Cheers.